So
why don't we, just running out of time here, why don't we get to our history segment?
yeah, so well, it's kind of good timing too, because you were just talking about Faustino. What did you say? You said you were talking about trust and how that's so important for everybody to kind of come together to create this thing. And it's not, I don't know if it's history, it's not like deep history, but I get a lot of my history stuff and things that I do on here from Improv Nation by Sam Wasson.
Yep.
So have you read that?
I own the book.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
It's a good one.
What I did was the Improv for Humans episode where Matt Besser tries to decompress the book with Sam Wasson in the studio.
Oh,
is
really?
how much I love the book.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, so this is just kind of from his observation in the book. He's kind of talking about Chicago and Chicago blues and how Viola Spolin, who we talk a lot about Viola Spolin on this podcast, she's like the mother of improv, known as, that those things that those things kind of happened, like the jazz era, and when she started sort of improvising with immigrant children, and he kind of makes this observation. I'm going to do a little quote here. So he's talking about jazz and Viola Spolin being from the same era, and quote, he says, "This lends credence to prevailing theory of jazz as the American sound of spontaneous inclusion, or yes and in the improv world." And then he goes on to quote Winston Marsalis, who, if you don't know, was a famous jazz musician, who says, "The real power and innovation of jazz is that a group of people can come together and create art, improvised art, and can negotiate their agendas with each other. And that negotiation is the art." So I just love that. And you touched on this a little bit. You were like, musicians need to learn improvisation before they learn music. So what are your thoughts, or what do you think?
Okay. I always love the fact that we always stem improv. Viola Spolin is the lady, Paul Styles is the guy, right? That kind of, and gave us all these things. This thing, I will say this because I think it's important to talk about it, that as much as I think just American jazz is definitely a staple of our country. I don't think improvisation is inherently American.
Okay.
Just because the first thing I think about is I took a class at UNLV, a lot of Arabic music from Egypt, like a lot of their, even to this day when they do concerts, it's like they have this set drone of music and they'll improvise for like an hour. But the ideas of like collaborating is important. That's just true among cultures in general. Every culture has this thing of like, here's our set rules of how our engagement of play is set. And then it's really up to the artist to do whatever on the confines of that. Acknowledging that it's not, I'm saying it mostly for diversity purposes. It's not just American jazz. It's like most cultures have some form of improvisation built into it. That's my very radical, like just throwing that out there.
No, I appreciate that for sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, but as far as like, I mean, improv is this, so, but I think for sure that those connections are important. Like, musicians improvise, but really all they're doing is, we all know the song, we all know Autumn Leaves, we all know the intro to Hey Arnold, because we know the changes written out in front of us. It's just a matter of, in our heads, can we sing a melody that all those notes, all those notes that people make up, it's not just a bunch of heebie-jeebie, it's those notes have to fit in the chord progression. So like, as people talk about a string of pearls, like they're not going like they're still like in their head. They still have to mathematically, like we using voice leading and stuff, is like they still have to abide by those rules. Every note, unless you're like a college freshman, I've seen a college freshman get slammed by the professor, but like every note still has to agree with the rules underlying it. Like it's not just throwaways. It's like every note is still precious because they're still abiding by the rules. So in improv, like there's still these things about like yes and scene partners and like, hey, let's stay in this universe of the environment. Like we can't just Michael Scarner way out of every scene. I've done that before actually. We can't just like, oh, we are Oompa Loompas in a factory. Here comes a gun. Like like as funny as that is. Why are you laughing? Like there's some funny to it because it's so absurd, but like that kind of builds a little bit of distrust because if people just built this entire thing, to begin with, like there's a risk to bringing those things outside of it. It's when people play together. Oh my gosh, I do this to my kids nowadays. Like recently, like in elementary school, like the kids who have been like, you've been kicked out of music specials. I've been telling them like, you realize that when you're laughing by yourself and causing harm, no one's laughing, so you're actually being cruel and unusual. It's when you try your best in the context, like I don't care if you snort while we're trying to sing the national anthem. It's because you've tried and went overboard. That's why we all think it's funny.